There is something about being in a room of people who are like you from these two aspects of experience and income qualifications that probably made a difference. And Joe, I'm actually going to call in with you. I know it was 13 years ago that you joined Coach, but you kind of made that decision after getting to that level, correct?
Yep. So the ceiling of complexity is one of my favorite concepts. So when you talk about experience, it's kind of neat because I don't think we ever stop hitting new ceilings of complexity, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's personal, fitness, relationship, etc. So that was clearly the thing that brought me into Coach. And I've always used the kind of explanation that, so for example, for me as a financial advisor, whatever our goal was, if it was 100 million, 200 million, like we hit a billion, we hit 2 billion. So now we're targeting 5 billion, right? But there's new ceilings of complexity. And we always jokingly say, I know what got me to my first billion. I don't know. I know what got me to the second billion, but what has to change to get to 5 billion? And you would 5 billion, I will tell you, if it seems like any of you are financial advisors in the room, was never even on our radar when I started Strategic Coach. So to put it in perspective, it wasn't even on the radar. And so the ceilings of complexity just changed, right? So we were talking about digital marketing, right? I now have 3 digital marketing companies. So those ceilings of complexity, you continue to go through faster. So I would say without Strategic Coach, I believe, again, a little bit of rugged individuals, but I believe I would have got through it, but it would have taken me 10 or 15 years, right? So going through Strategic Coach, those ceilings of complexities are much shorter and I get through them much quicker, partly because of the community, so I love the ceiling of complexity. I use it all the time because I have individual advisors that work on my team and they are all hitting their different ceilings of complexity as well.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite concepts.
I love that. And you were like, oh yeah, I remember when I was hitting that, right?
Yeah. And I also have to look back and say, like, one of my guys just hit 50 million in assets today, which was a big goal for him, right? So you kind of think back like, okay, what was that first ceiling of complexity? And part of it is, I don't think I would have ever envisioned before I joined Coach Matt, having a firm with 2 billion, right? So now we are on 5 billion and we're fairly confident we're going to hit it, but it's all of the different tools. Like I was on the breakout and I said, look, we've incorporated, there's stuff on my desk that's Strategic Coach related that everybody that sits across from me sees it. You know what I mean? We've won cultural awards behind me for doing what we do. All of that is ceiling of complexity, right? How do we make this a great place to work? Because I'm in a competitive industry, I want the best of the best, right? And I'm right across from New York City. I'm 10 minutes away. So I got to deliver against some of the biggest companies. So yeah, so ceiling of complexity. The other thing I was really happy that you mentioned was income, right? So when I first joined, I had the income and some success, but I probably didn't have the confidence to be pursuing 5 billion back then.
Yeah.
The Strategic Coach, I brought one of my best friends into Coach and it dramatically changed his level of confidence. And that just kind of permeates through his whole life. So I think that's important that you mention it because if you're not confident, you're not sure, you don't know how, I would just sometimes, what's the book? Think and Don't Think. I forget the name of the book. Just do, right? So sometimes there are things you should just do. I had a guy who joined Coach last week, I gave to Amelia, and he asked me a question. I said, look, I said, you have the money, don't think. I said, you won't regret it. So anyway.
I love that. Yeah. And Rick asked, Joe, if you would share what your growth curve looks like since joining Strategic Coach. I know what I think it probably looks like. And there's lots of ways to measure growth, but in terms what you were just talking about was assets under management. So what does the curve look like if you were to chart that out roughly?
So thinking back, I went into Coach 13 years ago, and I want to say as a company, from an advisory standpoint, I think we're at $300 million, something like that. And then we went from 300 to 500 to 800. And what was interesting is, you can't see from here, but there's a credenza over there with just Strategic Coach. And I can tell you, I've got the next 10 years planned out already. And part of the thing that you realize is, so I look at the trajectory. So we went from point A to point B to point C. We hired 1 marketing person. We hired 2 marketing person. We hired a digital marketing. So much is created in the Coach. Like I come back from Chicago where I normally fly to, right? And we just deliver and like, here's the plan for the next year. And so we went, now I think we have 20 people, 24 people. We may buy a company bigger than us, which we don't know if we want it, but we might double in size in the next 6 months. So it was just, with the ceiling of complexity, we would go to a certain level, hit a threshold, and we'd be at that ceiling of complexity for 1 or 2 quarters. And part of it was, were we wanting to, and were we ready to go to the next level? So part of it is we could have went faster sooner, but we wanted to do it on our terms and not give up our family time and stuff like that. So we hit 2 billion this year. We were probably at 1.6 maybe last year. We don't really track it in terms of numbers. It's just been pretty steady. What's interesting though, I'll tell you, is realize I joined right before 08, 09. So if any advisors in the room, I stayed, we had our best year. This year again, we hired 5 new people this year. So we are slow and steady, and now we're focused on our acquisition. So I hope that answers Rick's question.